Hey friends, what's going on? This is another Fun with Azure. This time, Synapse Studio Part 5. We're still gonna discuss the Synapse Studio, basically the user interface for Azure Synapse. So, we already discussed data and develop in prior videos to some extent. We also covered these others already sort of in an overview sense. What I want to do this time is a slightly different kind of breaks with the rhythm that we did so far, but I think it's very important to also do a video on helpful resources and helpful learning materials, right? And one that I quite frequently turn to, that not the only one, but a quite frequent one, is the Azure Synapse Analytics docs, right? So if you use your search engine of preference and type in Azure Synapse Analytics docs, you'll come to this one here, and this is basically a collection of all kinds of help around Azure Synapse. And I did actually download this as a PDF. You can do this here, or you can use that one here. I for some reason prefer the PDF, and this is a pretty large document, so it takes a bit to download depending on your internet connection, but it's roughly 3,800 pages, right? So huge file. But let's go over this and let's have a look inside and see what we can gain from that, because this is top first-hand information from Microsoft, and this is definitely going to be helpful in your journey with Synapse. So let me get oriented here. So as I'm going through that one here, I'm in the overview section, and obviously this is the overview. What I like is that what's new, right? So I frequently check that, and if there's a topic that I'm interested in, obviously I click on it and I get some more details, right? So here, like serverless SQL pools now support a more consistent query execution types. So that's definitely good to know. Then we have here the terminology. It might taste a little bit too small, but you definitely can add. That's a good start. I like that though. It's still helpful of sorts. Now this is definitely helpful. The quick start. It basically goes through a complete end-to-end example of setting up a workspace. You can see it here already, sort of in the hierarchy view on the left-hand side, right? We create the workspace, and we analyze using serverless SQL pools, right? So we don't provision, that's the inbuilt account. So here's the steps, and we use the taxi data, New York taxi data set, very common data set for like that. And I think it's even part of the they provide basically a link to it with the sources, and you don't need to worry about even uploading this yourself or anything like that, so you can get started right away, and then use all the proper tooling to get this work done, right? So that's pretty impressive here. And the Spark, the dedicated SQL pool, use data and storage. So of sorts, those are different use cases that different personas can use here and can analyze. We did some of this already, but we didn't do in a whole lot of detail yet. Is integrate with pipelines, right? So remember, this is the integrate hub in our slides. And I go back here real quick just to tie this to the studio again. This is integrate. This is that one here, right? So integrate. So and I go back here, enable the hierarchy view again. Then we cover that one. So this is integrate with pipelines. So this could definitely be a good example. So we create a pipeline and add a notebook activity, schedule the pipeline to run every hour, okay, and then forcing a pipeline to run immediately. So this basically, I mean, the situation here could be we have a file in a storage account in container A, and we want to move it to container B, and then we could do that one here. That could be one use case to get more into the details of this. Then we have Power BI, and that's actually an interesting part here because we haven't looked at that at all yet, but that's also in Integrate, right? So allows you to basically visualize the data that you have with Power BI. As it fulfills the requirement, you would just then deploy this to the workspace, to the Power BI workspace for end users, and obviously they need to have the right permission to be able to then browse this, right? So there's monitor. I mean, this is a perfect section to go through. Now, one thing I want to point out, unfortunately, it does not talk a lot about data security and connectivity, VNet, authentication, all these type of things. It's more focused really on the data processing, and in real life projects you can't ignore data security, right? So this is where here's the workspace coming in, and under workspace, and don't ask me why they did it like this, in concepts there's a security area here with all kinds of details. So network security, yada yada yada. So there's quite a bit to it, firewall rules, and even private endpoints. Saw this the other day. So connect to storage account, private link hubs. That's that extra thing you gotta do to make even the connectivity to the portal private. Lots of things to consider when it comes to this one. Another how-to guide for managed secure, and this is actually then a bit more detailed. Data exfiltration protection, also a very important topic. And what I found very interesting here, see, this is one of the steps within the cluster generation. This is actually also one of the features, if they're not enabled in the beginning, you will not be able to add them, right? Then you have to recreate a workspace, right? Knowing what features are basically, we can add after the fact versus the features that have to be added at creation time. Otherwise, you have to create a new workspace, right? That's a general thing in Azure, but definitely applies here as well. Here, managed private endpoints, one of my favorite topics, of course. Go through the setup here, and this actually shows, what does it show in detail? Let me, private endpoint to your data source, right? So and see, this is a managed private endpoint, right? This is different from a traditional classical private endpoint. So there's definitely some more work needed, but like I said, this is a good starting point. I want to cover maybe the database templates. That's also quite interesting. This is a newer capability here, and what it basically allows you to do is build data models within Synapse, and it's basically adding a new persona, the data modeler. And I think the data modeler needs to get a revival. In the last couple of years, I feel like we had too much discussions around tooling and platforms and stuff. Data modeling took a bit of a backseat, and data modeling is still very, very important, even in big data and IoT times. Without solid data modeling, systems won't be able to provide you the value that you expect. Yeah, what this basically provides you here, the data modeling or the database templates, this is actually a company that Microsoft bought. They provide all these different models here in these different industries. And the value that a customer gets by having those is, first of all, the expertise on those models, right? Building them yourself is a daunting task. And the second one is you can map them to your source. And I think there's even a link to this. You can map them to your source, and then you can basically automatically generate the pipelines, right? And we all know that generating pipelines is a lot of work. So the idea is here to automate the generation of the pipelines. It's in the beginning phase or stage, so expect a bit more. But just want to look at the other things, and then we need to wrap this up here. I see that we have here Synapse SQL, Quick Start tutorials. Okay, for another one, serverless SQL pool tutorial. Okay. So then, time series, seasonality, and outlier analysis. So we can definitely gain some knowledge from here. And using those pieces and bits here is definitely gonna be interesting, because there's always some value in there. Okay, let me scroll further. Data Explorer, Apache Spark, of course. There's a whole slew of stuff here in Apache Spark. When I go concepts, Spark pool, GPU accelerated Spark pools. So this is primarily used for neural networks. Then we have the Delta Lake, basically an enhancement evolution of the data lake. Now we're at the lake house, and now they're already talking about the data mesh. So lots of stuff going on in that space. Also, the intelligent cache is interesting, right? So we have that. So very, very interesting here. There's so much I would need, at least another video to cover some of this, just going through. And see here, there's a security white paper that they recently is actually an interesting concept. It's not your typical download file. It's just those different sections with data discovery and classification and encryption. Most of this, and I'm simplifying here, but most of this applies to the dedicated pool. Most of it does not apply yet, and it's mentioned pretty much across the board. Does not apply to, unfortunately, to the serverless pool, which indicates what is new or what is older. But okay, so I think I need to wrap this up here. We're already way over the mark time-wise, but yeah, I also see the Azure CLI. Let me see if that works this time. It didn't last time, and it doesn't. So there's a bug here with that link. But the Azure CLI is something really interesting as well, because when it comes to like DevOps, and there was a link that I saw earlier on how to set up continuous integration. Let me see if I find this, because that would also be very important to have that worked out. Create workspace. There was some material, and here's source control, and here's the one that I wanted to show: continuous integration and delivery for workspace. So this is all set up here. Then you would basically not directly push your stuff into a workspace. You would go to a repo, and then a build or release job would push it out there. So a huge amount of materials here. So take some time, dig through this, and also get clarity on what is it that you want to focus on. Right, focusing on everything in a product as comprehensive as Synapse is a daunting task. So I would focus on certain pieces and go from there. Okay, hope this was helpful. Next time we're gonna continue again with the pool, but I figured having with a discussion around Synapse Studio, but I figured this is helpful to really get a bit more details on the overall environment. There's also samples out there somewhere. Let me make sure. This is actually quite important. Here there's a samples folder, or samples link, sorry, and it opens up that GitHub repo, and then you see a whole slew of stuff here. So spend some time on this, exploring, and I typically focus on the ones that are less than a year old, because those are mostly still relevant. Others may still be relevant, but given this stuff changes so frequently, it may not be. So you need to check on that. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and provides more inspiration to look at other stuff. But quite a bit of help. There's other stuff out there, but this is typically my starting point. Okay. Thanks so much. Leave me a comment if you have any questions, or reach out, and we'll go from there. Cheers. Have a good one.